Summer 1999. George Michael was at a crossroads in his life. The Sony lawsuit was behind him. He'd lost but survived. His personal life was complicated, publicly linked to Kenny Goss since 1996, but their relationship was open, non-traditional. George was searching for something: stability, commitment, connection. In June 1999, George traveled to Greece, officially for vacation. His father Kyriakos was from Cyprus. Greek heritage ran deep. George loved Greece, the islands, the culture, the anonymity he could find there that he couldn't in London or LA. George stayed in a private villa on a small island, away from tourists, away from media. And there, according to witnesses who later came forward, something extraordinary happened. George Michael got married. Not a publicity stunt, not a commitment ceremony, an actual wedding in a small Greek Orthodox church, with a priest, with witnesses, with vows. But here's the shocking part. No one knows who he married. The groom's identity remains one of George's most closely guarded secrets, and George took that secret to his grave. But here's something you don't know: George Michael secretly married in 1999. Greece, private ceremony, only 12 witnesses. No legal documents found. Witness: George wore simple ring. They exchanged vows in Greek Orthodox church secretly. Partner's identity never revealed. The story first emerged in 2017, months after George's death. A Greek tabloid published an interview with an elderly priest, Father Dimitrios, from a small village on one of the Cyclades Islands. Father Dimitrios claimed he'd officiated George Michael's wedding in June 1999. Excerpt from the interview, translated from Greek. It was a beautiful summer evening. A man came to me, not George, someone else, asking if I would perform a private wedding ceremony. Very private, very secret. I asked why the secrecy. He said one of the men getting married was famous and couldn't risk publicity. He offered a generous donation to the church. I agreed. Father Dimitrios continued. The next evening, 2 men arrived. One was George Michael. I recognized him immediately, though he wore simple clothes, sunglasses, tried to look ordinary. The other man was American, I think, or maybe Canadian, English speaker, handsome, younger than George, maybe early 30s, dark hair, athletic build. They had 12 guests, friends I assumed, all sworn to secrecy. I learned this later. The ceremony was traditional Greek Orthodox, vows in Greek and English, rings exchanged, simple gold bands, nothing elaborate. George cried during the vows. I remember that clearly. He was emotional, genuinely moved. After the ceremony, they had a small dinner. I was invited. George thanked me, gave me an envelope with money. Very generous, he said. Father, please never speak of this. It's important that this stays between us and God, I promised. And I kept that promise for 18 years. But now George is gone, and I'm old. I wanted people to know he found love. He found commitment, even if it was secret. The interview caused a brief stir. British tabloids picked it up. George Michael's secret Greek wedding. But mainstream media was skeptical. No documentation. No marriage certificate on file in Greece or UK. No corroboration beyond one old priest's story. George's estate declined to comment. Kenny Goss, when asked, said, I don't know anything about a wedding in 1999. George and I were together then, but our relationship was open. He could have done anything, but he never told me about a wedding. So was Father Dimitrios telling the truth? Or was this a fabricated story from an old man seeking attention? Investigators tried to verify. Traveled to the island Father Dimitrios mentioned. Found the church small, isolated, rarely used. Church records from 1999 showed nothing. No wedding registered. But that doesn't prove it didn't happen. In Greece, especially in small villages, ceremonies can be performed without official registration, especially if money changes hands, especially if secrecy is requested. Partner's identity never revealed. Some say Kenny Goss, but they officially met 1996. Others say mystery businessman from Texas. George died never telling anyone. Who was the secret husband? Theories about the mystery husband have circulated for years. Theory 1, Kenny Goss. Despite Kenny's denials, some believe the wedding was with him. Perhaps George and Kenny had a private commitment ceremony that Father Dimitrios misunderstood or exaggerated as a legal marriage. Problem with this theory, Kenny has always maintained they were never married, even privately. And why would George keep it secret from Kenny himself, if Kenny was the groom? Theory 2. Mystery Texas businessman. Rumors in George's inner circle suggest he had a relationship in the late 1990s with a wealthy American businessman from Texas. Closeted, married to a woman publicly, could only see George in secret. This man allegedly wanted commitment from George but couldn't risk being outed. A secret wedding would give them both what they needed. Commitment for George, continued secrecy for the businessman. Problem: no name has ever been attached to this theory. No evidence this man existed. Theory 3. Anselmo Filippa redux. Some conspiracy theorists suggest George never got over Anselmo Filippa, his lover who died in 1993. Perhaps the 1999 wedding was symbolic, George marrying Anselmo's memory in a spiritual ceremony. Father Dimitrios mentioned 2 men, but maybe the second man was standing in for Anselmo's spirit. Problem: this seems far-fetched, even for George. Theory 4. Completely unknown partner. The most likely scenario: George had a relationship with someone completely outside his public life. Someone he met in Greece or during travels. Someone who valued privacy as much as George did. They married secretly, maintained a relationship for years or months, and when it ended, both kept the secret. George out of respect for his partner's privacy. The partner out of respect for George's wishes. But who was this person? Why has he never come forward, even after George's death? Possible reasons. Still closeted. Coming forward would ruin his life, career, family, reputation. Legally bound. Maybe there was an NDA, a financial agreement requiring permanent silence. Dead. Perhaps the mystery husband died before George, taking the secret with him. Doesn't care? Maybe he's moved on, remarried, and sees no benefit in claiming he was once married to George Michael, protecting George's legacy. Perhaps he believes revealing himself would harm George's memory, or create unnecessary scandal. And shocking detail. 2011, George almost revealed it in an interview. Started, "There's something people don't know. In 1999, then stopped. No, I can't say. I promised I wouldn't tell." Who did he promise? Why? The interview was with a British journalist for GQ magazine in 2011, ostensibly about George's comeback after his near-death pneumonia experience. Most of the interview was standard. Health, music, future plans. Then the journalist asked about regrets. George's answer started normally. "I regret not being more open about my personal life earlier in my career. I wasted years hiding who I was. That was a mistake." The journalist followed up. "Are there things you're still hiding?" George's paused. Long pause. "Then there's something people don't know. About my personal life. Something that happened in 1999. He trailed off. Seemed to be deciding whether to continue. "In 1999, I made a commitment. A serious commitment. To someone. And..." Another pause. No, I can't say. I promised I wouldn't tell. And I keep my promises." "Promised who?" the journalist asked. "The person involved. It was important to them. To both of us, actually. That it stay private, secret. So it will stay secret. Can you give any details? Even vague ones?" "No. I'm sorry. I've already said too much." George changed the subject. The interview moved on. But those few sentences were analyzed endlessly by fans and conspiracy theorists. A commitment in 1999. Promised I wouldn't tell. Important it stay secret. This matches the timeline of the alleged Greek wedding, and it suggests George wasn't just protecting his own privacy. He was protecting someone else's. Someone he cared about enough to keep the secret even in 2011, 12 years later. Someone he'd promised. And George, for all his flaws, was loyal. He kept his promise. But the most mysterious part, George's will contained mysterious clause. Obligations arising from private agreement made in 1999 shall be fulfilled. Which agreement? Lawyers refuse to explain, but some say marriage settlement. George's will was made public, partially, in 2017 during estate proceedings. Most of it was standard. Money to family, to Kenny Goss, to fatty fawaz, to charities. But buried in the legal language was a curious clause. Any and all obligations arising from private agreement dated June 1999 shall be identified and fulfilled by the estate executors. Details of said agreement are held in sealed documentation with estate attorneys. Discretion is paramount. What agreement? Estate lawyers have never clarified. When pressed, they say it's a private matter involving confidential arrangements Mr. Michael made during his lifetime. The estate is handling it appropriately. But the date, June 1999, matches the alleged Greek wedding, and the word obligations suggests ongoing financial or legal commitments. Marriage settlement is the obvious conclusion. If George married someone in 1999, there might be financial obligations. Money promised to the spouse, either ongoing or as a lump sum upon George's death. Property rights. Perhaps the spouse was entitled to a home or partial ownership of George's estate. Confidentiality payments. Money contingent on the spouse maintaining permanent silence about the marriage. If George's estate is fulfilling obligations from 1999, and if those obligations require discretion, it strongly suggests a secret marriage with a secret spouse who is still being financially supported and legally protected. But George's estate has paid out millions since his death. To family, to partners, to charities, to lawyers. Which payments went to the mystery husband? We'll never know, because the estate's records are sealed, and the lawyers aren't talking. 2017, 1 year after George's death, elderly Greek priest spoke. I married George Michael in 1999. Small village church. Very secret. His spouse was American. Won't give name because George asked, but marriage was real. Father Dimitrios' interview mentioned earlier provided the most detailed account. Additional excerpts. After the ceremony, George and his husband, yes husband, that's what they were, stayed on the island for 3 days. I saw them walking on the beach, holding hands. Happy. George looked peaceful. I'd never seen him in person before except on television, but in person he seemed different, lighter, like a weight had been lifted. The journalist asked, did George and his spouse seem to love each other? Absolutely. The way they looked at each other during the vows, that was real love. Not performance, not convenience, love. Why do you think they kept it secret? The other man was not famous. I think he wanted privacy, and George respected that. Also, in 1999, gay marriage was not legal anywhere. This was a spiritual marriage recognized by the church and by God, but not by the state. Perhaps they didn't want to fight that battle publicly. Do you know if the marriage lasted? I don't know. I never saw them again. George sent me a Christmas card every year until 2015. Just signed G, no return address, just so I knew he was thinking of me. Then in 2016, no card. I assumed something was wrong. Then I heard he died. I cried, I prayed for him, and for his husband, whoever he is, wherever he is. Father Dimitrios died in 2019, 2 years after giving the interview. His story remains the most detailed account of George's alleged secret marriage. But it's uncorroborated. No photos, no documents, just an old priest's memory. Is it true, or a kind old man's fantasy? We may never know. And final truth emerging. Kenny Goss, 2023, rare interview, said something strange. George and my relationship was complex. People thought we were lovers, but truth was more layered. George had other commitments. I respected them. Other commitments? Secret marriage? January 2023. Kenny Goss gave a rare interview to promote an art exhibition. Most questions were about art, about his life post-George. But one journalist asked about their relationship. Kenny's answer was unusually cryptic. George and I loved each other. That's not in question. But our relationship was unconventional. People wanted to put us in a box, boyfriends, partners, whatever. But it was more complicated. How so? Kenny seemed to choose words carefully. George had other commitments, other relationships, other obligations. I knew about them. I accepted them. Because I loved George, and I understood he needed different things from different people. I couldn't give him everything. No one person could. Are you saying George had other partners while with you? I'm saying George's life was complex, layered. There were parts of his life I wasn't privy to, and that was okay. We had an understanding. The journalist pressed. Did George have a secret marriage? Kenny smiled, didn't answer directly. George had secrets. Everyone does. Some secrets died with him, and maybe that's how it should be. But you know the secrets? Some of them, not all. George kept certain things very private, even from me. Does it bother you that he kept secrets? No, because I kept mine too. That's what made our relationship work. Mutual respect for privacy. Mutual acceptance of complexity. This interview reignited speculation. Kenny seemed to be confirming that George had significant relationships or commitments outside their partnership. And his phrase, other obligations, echoes the language in George's will. Was Kenny acknowledging the secret marriage? Or was he referring to something else entirely? Other lovers, other friendships, other financial arrangements? Kenny hasn't clarified, and he's made clear he won't. George's secrets are his to keep, Kenny said in a follow-up statement. I won't reveal what he wanted hidden. Out of respect, out of love, and out of the understanding we had. His life was his own, and some of it he chose to keep private. That's his right, even in death. The questions that remain. Did George really marry in 1999? Who was the mystery husband? Is he still alive? Is he receiving money from George's estate under the 1999 obligations clause? Why did George keep it secret? And will the truth ever emerge, or will George's secret marriage remain one of pop music's greatest unsolved mysteries? These questions fascinate fans and researchers. The evidence is tantalizing but inconclusive. Father Dimitrios' testimony, credible but uncorroborated. George's 2011 near confession. I promised I wouldn't tell. The will's mysterious 1999 clause. Kenny's cryptic comments about other commitments. The lack of denial from George's estate. Put together, it suggests something happened in 1999. Some commitment, some relationship, some promise. Whether it was a legal marriage, a spiritual ceremony, or something else entirely, George considered it important enough to keep secret for 17 years. Important enough to reference in his will. Important enough to promise silence about. And he kept that promise. Never revealed the person's name. Never confirmed the marriage publicly. Never broke the trust. That, perhaps, tells us everything we need to know about George's character. Whatever happened in 1999, whoever he committed to, George honored that commitment to the end. The mystery husband, if he exists, remains protected, hidden, free to live his life without the burden of being George Michael's secret spouse. Maybe that's what George wanted. Not just privacy for himself, but protection for someone he loved. Someone who needed secrecy more than George needed to tell the truth. And if that's the case, maybe the secret should stay buried. Maybe some loves are meant to be private. Maybe some marriages are meant to be known only to God, to the couple, and to 12 witnesses in a small Greek church on a summer evening in 1999. Maybe that's enough. The world doesn't need to know everything. George made his choice, kept his promise, loved someone so deeply he never revealed their name. And maybe that's the greatest love story of all, the one we'll never fully know.